Welcome to the deep dive, and specifically to Porter-Pedia, our ongoing exploration into the incredible world and timeless work of Cole Porter. Today, we're embarking on a really special journey, actually, looking into a fascinating connection that bridges generations of musical theater genius. Our mission today for you is to peel back the layers and truly understand how one titan of American musical theater, Stephen Sondheim, viewed another, Cole Porter. It's a story filled with, well, profound admiration, some unexpected lessons, and even a moment that Sondheim himself famously called the proudest of his lyric writing life. We'll be drawing all our insights from our source, which gives us this unique and intimate window into Sondheim's detailed reflections on Porter's wit, his sophistication, his surprising sincerity, and his, frankly, unparalleled songcraft. So where does the story of these two giants begin? It's maybe not where you'd expect. Not a grand haul, but a very personal, maybe slightly awkward encounter for a young Stephen Sondheim.
It really does. You have to picture it. An 18-year-old Sondheim. He's a student at Williams College. Clearly talented already, but also, probably pretty terrified. He's been invited to Cole Porter's suite at the Waldorf Astoria, if you can believe it, to play a song he wrote for a school review.
Can you even imagine walking into Cole Porter's space? I mean, probably spotless, perfect, worried about tracking mud, apparently, and then having to perform your own student work. What was the song, and how did Porter react?
Oh, yes, the white carpets. The song was called the Canastatico, the pastiche song. Basically, a musical imitation designed to entertain by mimicking a certain style. Now, you might expect a legend like Porter to just give a polite nod, maybe a quick compliment. But this is key. According to Sondheim, Porter wasn't just about lyrics. He had this unexpected generosity. Mentorship, even.
Really? Not just a dismissal?
No, not at all. Genuine, constructive feedback. He told Sondheim the song wasn't bad, but then he actually showed him how to extend the endings to make it more Porter-ish.
Extend the endings? That sounds so specific. What does that even mean, practically? How might that have stuck with Sondheim?
Well, it's that kind of detail, isn't it? It highlights Porter's genius and, his generosity. Extending the endings means taking a musical idea or a lyrical phrase and developing it more, letting it breathe, adding a clever twist, maybe a sophisticated little flourish, instead of just stopping.
Ah, okay.
Think about how Porter builds those intricate soaring phrases. For Sondheim, this wasn't just praise. It was a master sharing a real secret of the craft. He remembered Porter not just as this icon, but as a generous man. It must have taught him the value of elaboration, making every bit count, never settling. That lesson coming from Porter, huge for Sondheim's own developing meticulousness.
That is a profound first lesson. Okay, now let's jump forward about 10 years. 1959, the circumstances are, well, they're dramatically different. Porter's in a much darker place. He's just had his second leg amputation, battling deep depression.
Yes, a truly awful period for him. And the legendary Ethel Merman, along with Jules Stein, they realized Porter needed cheering up. So they brought Sondheim over to Porter's New York apartment. The idea was to perform songs from their new show, Gypsy, maybe bring a little light in.
Right. So Sondheim's at the piano. He's playing Together, Wherever We Go, from Gypsy. And he gets to this specific line in the bridge, those tight rhymes, no fits, no fights, no feuds, and no egos. And then he throws in a surprise fourth rhyme, something Porter wouldn't see coming.
Absolutely. The unexpected twist was amigos.
Amigos.
Yeah. And when Sondheim hit that line, no fits, no fights, no feuds, and no egos, amigos,
Yeah.
he heard Cole Porter, the absolute master of ingenious rhymes, give what he described as a delighted gasp. Sondheim later recounted it. You could hear the pride. He hadn't seen it coming.
That's incredible. To actually surprise Cole Porter with a rhyme, what made that rhyme so perfectly Porter-ish that it got that reaction?
It's that blend of sophistication and the clever use of foreign words. That was pure Porter.
Ah, of course.
Porter loved sprinkling French, Spanish, whatever, into his lyrics. It added that cosmopolitan flair. So Amigos wasn't just a rhyme. It was like a stylistic wink, a perfect imitation of Porter's own playful genius in a song being performed for him. And for Sondheim, who often said he didn't really care much for awards or praise,
Right.
he called this moment the proudest moment of my lyric writing life. It wasn't about fame. It was about impressing the person he saw as the absolute pinnacle of the craft.
Oh.
Just this amazing moment of artistic validation across generations. A master spotting the cunning in a future master.
That's just a fantastic story. Okay, so moving beyond the personal history, Sondheim's analytical side really comes out, especially when he compares Porter to others. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Sondheim made this striking, almost paradoxical comment. He called Porter one of the three Gentile composers. He admired Kern and Rogers were the others. But then he immediately adds that Porter's music is very Jewish. Now, when you first hear that, you kind of go, wait, what? What did Sondheim mean by that?
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Sondheim, always the keen musical observer, explained that even though Porter came from this background of, immense wealth, was upper privilege totally different from traditional Jewish culture. His music often used scales common in Middle Eastern and Jewish traditions, especially in the minor keys. Sondheim basically said, listen to any Cole Porter song in a minor key and you'll hear it. It's Semitic.
So we're talking about specific musical sounds, not the lyrics. Can you maybe elaborate on what those Jewish-inflected scales or Semitic qualities actually sound like? What should we listen for?
Definitely the music itself. Think about standard Western major and minor scales. They have very familiar patterns. But in Middle Eastern and Jewish musical traditions, you often find more chromaticism.
Meaning?
Notes outside the standard key. It creates this more exotic, sometimes kind of yearning or melancholic sound. Those Eastern-sounding harmonic twists. You hear similar things in, say, synagogue chants or in klezmer music.
Ah, okay. So not the words, but deep in the harmony. Can you give an example?
Exactly. Take huge Porter hits like Night and Day or Begin the Beguine. If you listen closely, especially in the bridges or the more dramatic parts, you catch these subtly shifting, almost modal feelings. The notes don't quite fit the usual Western patterns. It's those unexpected half steps, those turns that create a unique atmosphere, a kind of sophisticated sadness almost. Sondheim believed Porter might not have even done it consciously. It just shows how musical languages can blend, cross boundaries, maybe unconsciously, and enrich the sound in these really unexpected ways. It gave Porter's elegant melodies this undercurrent of something deeper.
That's a really fascinating insight. It definitely makes you want to go back and listen again with fresh ears. Now, Sondheim often used comparisons to sort of spotlight Porter's unique genius. He frequently put Porter next to Noel Coward, another master of wit from that time. But the comparison brought out a key difference Sondheim really cared about: sincerity.
All right, this is where Sondheim digs into the emotional heart of their work. He felt Coward, quote, never meant anything he wrote. His songs were brilliant, witty, urbane, sure, but ultimately kind of hollow, like a performance of cleverness. Porter, though, managed to infuse even his lightest songs with real, palpable emotion. That ache in So in Love or the sadness in Every Time We Say Goodbye, Sondheim believed that was genuinely Porter's own feeling coming through.
That's quite a strong claim about Coward being hollow. Why did Sondheim see it so starkly? Was it just the lyrics?
He actually tied it partly to their backgrounds, which is an interesting social angle. Porter, born super wealthy, had this sort of built-in confidence. He could afford to be emotionally generous in his art, maybe. He didn't need wit as a shield in the same way. Coward came from a more modest background. Sondheim maybe felt he used wit more defensively, keeping the world at arm's length. So for Sondheim, Porter's ability to be vulnerable, to show real longing beneath that sophisticated surface, that's what made his ballads truly last. He wasn't just clever. He was telling truths about desire, love, loss. That sincerity was huge for Sondheim.
That's a really powerful distinction. But Porter wasn't the only lyricist Sondheim looked at. He also contrasted Porter with another giant, Lorenz Hart, Richard Rodgers' famous partner. Sondheim admired Hart immensely, right? Calling him the best lyricist Broadway ever had when he was good. But there was a big but there.
There certainly was. Sondheim pointed out Hart's inconsistency. He even called it laziness at times.
Laziness, ouch.
Yeah. He meant things like Hart's tendency towards approximate rhymes, rhyming alone with telephone and blue moon. Or sometimes padding lines with cliches, filler, when maybe inspiration wasn't quite there.
But wait, isn't there sometimes a charm to that? Maybe Hart's stuff feels a bit more raw, more spontaneous compared to Porter's perfect polish.
That's a fair point. Audiences definitely connected to Hart's emotional honesty, even with the occasional rough edge.
Yeah.
But Sondheim, being the absolute craftsman he was, saw a different kind of strength than Porter. He linked Hart's inconsistencies, maybe rightly or wrongly, to his personal struggles, alcoholism, depression, which sadly did affect his focus. Porter, in contrast, was known for his meticulousness, just relentless craft, consistency. Even his most playful songs have these incredibly precise rhymes, intricate wordplay. Porter just didn't seem to settle.
Right.
He embedded that sincerity we talked about within this amazing sophistication and precision. For Sondheim, Porter stood for steadiness, elegance, emotional truth under the polish. That discipline was something Sondheim deeply respected and aimed for himself.
So consistent genius application versus brilliant flashes that could sometimes waver. Makes sense. Okay, let's shift to the structure, the architecture of the songs. Sondheim, a master architect himself, highlighted one area where he felt Porter was absolutely unmatched: the introductory verse.
Ah, yes, the verse.
By Sondheim's time, these sung prologues, setting the mood before the main chorus, they'd mostly fallen out of fashion, hadn't they? Why were Porter's so special?
Because he treated them seriously, not as throwaways, which is kind of how they ended up being seen later on. Porter's verses were, as Sondheim put it, carefully crafted mood setters.
Yeah.
They gave you the dramatic situation, the emotional context for the refrain you were about to hear. They weren't just warm-ups, they were essential to the song's meaning.
That's such a cool idea, setting the dramatic context first. Can you give us an example? How does a Porter verse actually do that?
Oh, absolutely. Think of the verse to Night and Day. It starts like the beat, beat, beat of the tom-tom when the jungle shadows fall, like the tick-tick-tock of the stately grandfather clock. Before you even hit that famous main tune, Porter's built this whole atmosphere, primal rhythm, relentless time passing. He creates this sense of obsessive longing, this unwavering devotion, using really vivid images and that hypnotic beat.
Yeah, you feel it immediately.
Or the verse to Every Time We Say Goodbye, that melancholy prelude perfectly sets up the heartache of the chorus. These verses don't just introduce the song, they establish the mood, raise the emotional stakes, paint a picture. They prepare you. It really shows Porter wasn't just a tunesmith, he was a dramatist, building a whole little narrative arc right there in the verse.
It's fantastic when you think about it that way. Okay, finally, Sondheim really saw Porter the artist, embedding his own persona into his work. Porter had this famous image, right? The ultimate urbane cosmopolitan.
Totally. The tuxedos, the glamorous parties in Paris, the martini always nearby.
But Sondheim looked past that surface glamour and saw something else. He called it an aching heart.
And this brings up really interesting questions about authenticity, the artist, and their work. Sondheim was convinced Porter's wit wasn't just for show, and his worldliness always had this edge of melancholy. Songs like So in Love, they aren't just clever constructions. They reveal the vulnerability of someone whose private life, well, as a gay man in a very restrictive time, often clashed deeply with that carefully polished public image.
So the wit and glamour weren't exactly a lie, but maybe more like a sophisticated mask covering a deeper truth.
That's a great way to put it. Sondheim suggested Porter's characters, so sophisticated, worldly, ironic, often mirrored Porter himself. But they were always yearning for something more. It's that duality, the glittering cocktail party, but with this subtle crack of loneliness underneath that gives his songs such lasting emotional depth. It's that mix of polish and pain, style, and genuine sincerity that made Porter, in Sondheim's eyes, a true poet of longing. It's why the songs still hit us, beyond just admiring the cleverness.
The cocktail party with a crack of loneliness. That's beautifully put. So looking at the big picture, Porter's place, Sondheim had his musical heroes, didn't he? Our source lists Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, Rodgers Gershwin, and Cole Porter. He apparently put Porter right at the top of his list.
Yeah, which tells you a lot. It shows Porter wasn't just writing catchy tunes. He was seen as a real innovator, making incredibly complex rhymes and advanced harmonies sound completely effortless, natural. Sondheim certainly didn't write like Porter stylistically, but he always pointed to him, acknowledged that lineage, saw Porter as setting the bar, the standard every lyricist should aim for.
Wow.
In a way, Sondheim seemed to place himself not in opposition to Porter, but in conversation with him. Like he was the next crucial link in that great Broadway chain, building on that tradition of craft and emotional honesty.
So when we put them side by side, our source points out both strong similarities and really key differences. Both were absolute craftsmen, obsessed with rhyme, rhythm, blending sophistication with accessibility. Their lyrics just sing, even without the music. Can you give an example of that lyrical music?
Oh, sure. Think of Porter's You're the Top. Just reading those lists, the internal rhymes, the alliteration, you're the nimble tread of the feet of Fred Astaire. It has this undeniable rhythmic punch.
Yeah, it does.
Or think of Sondheim, like a little priest from Sweeney Todd, that rapid-fire macabre wordplay. You practically hear the tempo and the accents just in the words. They both knew lyrics were musical components, not just text.
That's a perfect illustration. Okay, now, where did they diverge? What makes a Sondheim song feel so different from a Porter song, despite that shared mastery?
Well, the differences are just as important, really. They define their individual genius.
Mm.
Porter, as we discussed, often started with the music. Then he'd fit the words with this dazzling skill, prioritizing melody, that sophisticated wit. He often used wit to kind of cloak or elegantly hint at deeper emotions. He cultivated that public persona, and the longing sort of seeped through subtly.
Okay. And Sondheim.
Sondheim almost always started with the drama. The character, the situation, what needed to be expressed at that moment in the story. His lyrics grew directly out of character and plot, and he used precision not to cloak emotion but to reveal it, often with startling clarity. Think of a song like Being Alive from Company. Every line is like a surgical cut, exposing a character's raw vulnerability. Sondheim stripped away the facades. He dissected characters with this brutal yet somehow deeply empathetic honesty. His goal was to lay bare the inner world.
So it's almost like Porter throws the most fabulous, elegant cocktail party. The conversation sparkles, it's witty, but you sense this poignant truth hiding just beneath the laughter. Whereas Sondheim takes you out of the party into the quiet, intensely lit inner room behind it, where every note and rhyme exposes a character's soul. Is that a fair comparison?
That's a really excellent analogy. Perfect, actually. Porter gives you the key to the glamorous party, then subtly hints at the loneliness behind the smile. Sondheim ushers you straight into that raw, intimate space where there's no hiding from the complex, sometimes uncomfortable truth of being human. Both incredibly profound, but they guide you on very different emotional journeys.
What a journey this discussion has been, from that nervous student playing for a legend to the master himself receiving that gasp of delight. Stephen Sondheim's perspective on Cole Porter gives us such a rich, really nuanced understanding of what matters in songwriting. It's about that impeccable craft, yes, but also profound sincerity and maybe the courage to let that aching heart show even beneath all the sparkle.
Indeed. And ultimately, both Porter and Sondheim shared this fundamental belief, didn't they? That the absolute right word in the absolute right place married precisely to the right note. It could just stop you in your tracks, make you feel something powerful. Sometimes it's a laugh, sometimes a sigh, and, well, if you were very, very lucky, maybe even a gasp of pure delight.
So as you go about your day, maybe think about these layers we've uncovered. Put on a Cole Porter song maybe night and day and listen differently. Can you hear those subtle Jewish inflected scales Sondheim talked about, adding that unique depth? Or listen to So in Love and consider the aching heart beneath that smooth, cosmopolitan surface. What new dimensions, what new depths do you discover in these masterpieces, hearing them now, perhaps, through Sondheim's eyes and ears? Thank you for diving deep with us on this episode of The Deep Dive, part of our Porter-Pedia series. Until next time, keep exploring the incredible, intricate world where words and music meet.